Alright guys, welcome to VALORANT News. Big results in the VCT last night. G2 closing out a very impressive 5-0 stage. It was not all smooth sailing, however, last night. And TenZ, given the fact that Sentinels are on the verge of potentially even becoming the #1 seed in their group, suggesting whether he could potentially return to competitive play at some point in the near future. TenZ says for now, that is off the cards for a couple of reasons, but very much interested in your thoughts on all of this stuff in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I'd greatly appreciate it. Let's dive straight in. Firstly here, we talked about the big drama in the VCL France over the last few days with that DVM team getting kicked out of the league because, well, there was a fight, there was basically like gang violence borderline at one of the events that was happening, and the DVM owners seemed to be involved in that to some degree between the fan bases, so it was all kicking off and they got kicked out of the league, and I think most people would say it was maybe justified. Unfortunately for the players, even though when Riot and the teams announced this, they said, look, it doesn't affect the players, but it's like, you know, obviously it does, because they're not going to be playing for DVM anymore, so they've not got a spot. Now, fortunately for those players, Vitality confirmed yesterday that they have temporarily signed DVM's former roster for the Challengers League France. Following DVM's removal, we have made the decision to welcome the team's players under the Vitality banner, of course, for their, Challengers team. They'll compete through the end of Split 2 as VOT Revolution, starting this Saturday in the playoffs. So they agreed it in collaboration with the players and Riot Games. So actually, I think this is a really cool development here that Vitality are stepping in and saying, yeah, you know what, guys, this is, you got screwed over here by this organization or by the owners and some of the drama, so we will back you to keep on running. So yeah, welcome to those guys. Hopefully it goes well for them. We'll see if that actually works out in reality. Let's fast forward to what's been happening in the other regions. China, as ever, is a little bit ahead of the curve. They've already done their first round games. Titan Esports Club went down to DRG, as we saw yesterday. The Lotus in the end was an insane 18-16 banger. We saw, I think, the first couple of maps play out here. This is going to be such a hard one for TEC to take, because when you win the Ascent 13-1, to lose the Fracture 14-12, and then to go to another insane overtime after an 8-4 half on the Lotus, to then lose at 18-16, at the end of the day, were they going to make the run through losers bracket to make it to Toronto? Probably not, but still a crazy series. A DRG stay alive, and Nova Esports, they go down to Trace Esports, right? So Trace Esports, these guys should be, I think, have performed better than they have done so far this split. On the split here, there was a 13, none of them a 13-4. So I think TE are still a team that I wouldn't bet against to make a decent run here through the lower side, and a couple more series wins gets the job done for them. This, of course, a massive game, Billy Gaming versus Wolves Esports, because if you take the victory here, you're in pole position and, qualifying for Toronto, and this game's literally just got underway, so it's 0-0 as we stand. But BLG versus Wolves, that is certainly a big one. In the Pacific, they've not quite got to the playoffs yet, but they're not far away, and this is the big game of the day, really, and it's Lotus right now between G and PaperX. They won the game 13-5, so maybe they are going to, as maybe we still thought that they would, despite the difficult start for PaperX, get over the line. It's not been pretty, but they might get the job done. It was a 13-5 on Global Esports map pick on Split, but PaperX, after winning the Pistol, have just lost the last couple of rounds. So I'll refresh that towards the end of the video. But PaperX versus G, of course, is a massive game, because that effectively determines the final team that's going to qualify there out of Group Alpha. And obviously, even as and when they do qualify, they'll start in the losers side, as let's say Trace Esports have done, so that is going to be a challenge, but at least it gives themselves an opportunity, right? So that game's currently ongoing. We then have we have T1 versus Talon happening, DRX Gen.G, so some other very interesting games to close out the stage, although really it's all to play for in Group Omega, with this Talon Nongshim Zeta situation yet to be finalized. So yeah, big game upcoming for Talon after PaperX and GE concludes very shortly. Couple of big games in the EMEA side as well. This was Team Heretics and Miniboo extending, frankly, their dominant advantage so far in, well, Miniboo's numbers this stage are out of control. If you have a look at his stats in the last, let's just say 30 days, 60 days, doesn't really matter, it's the same thing. He has like the best numbers in the entire league so far. So yeah, he's been out of control. Na'Vi, they couldn't get the job done. They pretty much got slammed, to be fair. And I think some things to think about for Na'Vi, because I'm sure that it wasn't long ago that they were competing, they were winning, when they were FPX, of course, as well. They're right up there too. And it's not like things have changed drastically over the last couple of years. Angel obviously has got a little bit older, and like they still continue to be sometimes competitive, but compared to where Fnatic Fnatic were. Like, that used to be a nice rivalry, the Fnatic Na'Vi stuff. Nowadays, Na'Vi have just fallen off to some great degree, and this series was not really very close at all. Shao tried his best on the Teho, but it wasn't to be. Heretics got a clean win. I think Heretics though are really hitting form right now, so I think this says a bit more about Heretics maybe than it does against Na'Vi, because, well, we'll see the groups, how they sit in a second. This was probably the more telling series, though, because Karmine Corp versus For Esports, and the real disaster class here was from Elite. Now, this turned quite a lot of heads, right? Because Elite is a Turkish player playing a Turkish team. People are like, oh, he's a double agent, right? Here we go. But he was, like, terrible at every map. I mean, especially the Ascents. But game 1, he was 10-15 on the Vise. They won this one 14-12. They lost the Lotus 13-5. He had 4 frags. And the final map on the Ascent, of course, the Deadlock, he was 8-18. Sugetsu goes 26-13 for the L. Honestly, a disaster. Now, Zeus is unbelievable, by the way. This guy is so talented, it's exciting to watch him play. But I think for KC, they've got to have some thoughts, because they probably will feel they should have won this series, you know, with Sadak and the guys over there making a charge. But Elite just had a really difficult time in his ACS at 91. That's, you know, just tragic, right? So, yeah, tough series for him, all 3 maps, and there's going to be some pressure on, I would say, with the way that sits, because now they move to 2-2. They have a final game against Liquid, and Liquid are currently top of the group, and that's going to be a really big game, potentially. 2-3 could still make it in the right scenarios, depending on what happens with Gentlemates and KOI. Like, if KOI were to win that and you get 2 teams at 1-4, then, you know, KC will make it regardless, but it's still not going to be clean, is it? Na'Vi have made it anyway, so maybe that's okay. Heretics and Fnatic, of course, will play each other to determine who actually gets the #1 seed in a little bit of time. Let's talk about the Americas, though, because some big games happening there yesterday. The first one that I thought was, well, to determine really the #1 seed in Group Omega was Cloud9 versus G2. And G2, I mean, I think they talked about it the other day, looking to try and create a dynasty. It's like, well, look, before you create a dynasty, first you've got to actually win something. And maybe they will, internationally anyway, at least if they continue this present form. This moment was pretty funny. And in the end, they took a 2-1 win. But Cloud9 did pretty well this series, honestly. Like, game 1 was a pretty much dominant victory by the G2 guys. But game 2, Haven, on G2's pick, they got slammed 13-4 by C9. I think it was a cool story for Net. I mean, we didn't really talk about it much yesterday, but it is, of course, a talking point that when you've got Net versus his former team, they, of course, got rid of him from the roster in somewhat controversial circumstances. And I think it's cool to see that he's landed on a team that he's happy with and can contribute to. And the final map, Pearl, I mean, this really should have been, this probably should have gone further, to be fair. Like, Cloud9 had an opportunity to plant the spike in the final rounds. You know, it didn't happen. They could have got all the way. But in the end, no. G2 get the victory 13-11. So a very, very close competitive series here in the end. And I think that G2 will probably look back on this and say, we maybe could have played some better stuff. But at the end of the day, it's a 5-0 start regardless. Jonah P says, no secret that I've not been playing very well individually lately. It's been underwhelming. I wouldn't be here without my teammates helping me in and out of the game to gain my confidence back. I got them in the playoffs, he says. So, yeah, of course, they've advanced as the #1 seed to the playoffs. I think C9 can't be too mad about it either. Of course, a tough defeat, but a very competitive series against a real top team. The second series of the day, frankly, didn't really matter. I mean, MIBR won, but it was a strange series, right? I mean, the map 1 was a 13-3. So many just diffuses here. Aspas goes 25-5. And then the game 2 Ascent, Furia won all their attacking rounds, and it was 13-9. You don't see that every day, especially on attack on Ascent when a team is completely mentally chalked. And then the split was 13-8. There's not too much to say about this series, mainly because it doesn't mean much for either party. MIBR were confirmed, Furia were not confirmed, and as Aspas says, there wasn't really anything to play for. We were just playing it like it was practice. You know, it wasn't really worth anything to us or to them. So, you know, I get it, but Aspas definitely had some moments in this series regardless where he actually passed 4,000 total kills over, you know, he recently got past the 4,000 kill mark against Cloud9 the other day, and now he's continued it against Furia, which takes him to be the first player to ever do that over all of the matches that have happened so far in the VCT. So, very impressive. His career continues to be as such, but I did want to mention what TenZ had to say on stream over the last couple of days about potentially making a return. We've talked about it a lot lately in the context of Sentinels not maybe looking as strong as they did at some point last year with TenZ in the roster, certainly in Madrid, and also because the state of the game right now is maybe not the most appealing to some pro players. We know that Ye isn't very happy about things. And TenZ says this too, and he's like, yeah, it's not like TenZ doesn't have some level of drive and eagerness to still compete, but he just doesn't feel like the state of the game right now makes it particularly compelling to do so.
Do you see yourself unretiring in the future? Probably not. Simple answer, yeah. If I did come back, unless the game got changed like very, very drastically, I think early Valorant was really fun. But I think it's also like, it's like one of those situations where like everything feels new and fresh. And then because of that, it feels like a lot more fun. But like, I think early Val was actually like, outside of like it being like the honeymoon phase of like switching over to a new game, I think it was actually like pretty fun. How should someone play 6 ping versus 60 ping? I mean, this person with 6 ping can just literally let go of the keyboard. I will say, like, from what I've experienced, you maybe can abuse Peeker's advantage in like the 60-70 range. I would say 40 and 30 feels very bad because it feels like you don't get the benefit of either or. Like, honestly, in my opinion, over the current pings I have right now for Texas, Illinois, I would much rather play with 70 ping than play with 34 and 40, because then rather than being like spec'd into a way where everything is like mediocre, I would get absurd Peeker's advantage, but you wouldn't be able to hold anything. This is like, I can't hold anything and I don't get the insane Peeker's advantage. Like, that's why Illinois feels like terrible for me. But yeah, when I was first playing Valorant, bro, I was playing on 60 ping because I lived on an island and I didn't even have fiber at the time.
So maybe TenZ will come back at some point if Sentinels really need him, but right now it doesn't seem like they do. Sen play G2 tonight, and if they'll 2G tonight, not G2, they'll play G2 potentially kind of soon again, but they play 2G tonight, and if they win that, they're going to be fine regardless, right? But it depends what happens in the Crew 100T series. That's the big one, because Sen have the tiebreaker over 100T, they do not have the tiebreaker over Crew. So if 100T were to win and then Sen were to tie them, then it would be a Sen #1 seed. If not, it's going to be a Crew #1 seed, and then EG Loud, of course, tomorrow as well. So that's pretty much how things work tonight. We saw what Sentinel said on that right at the start of the video as well. So big games in terms of the seeding, because if you get the first seed, you get a bye, and that's pretty ideal as well. So that's where we're going to leave it for today. I will just quickly go back to this big game, the PaperX Global Esports, to see how it's getting on in the game too, and hit the refresh on it. Seems like we've got some sort of technical pause, because nothing has changed in the last few minutes there. So hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.